Go.
Israel has had its fair share of problems. It is arguably one of the toughest countries in the world. With its difficult history, struggling adversity, and political relations, Israel is one of the strongest countries in the whole entire world. Few areas on earth can match the Middle East for its drama. Its history, written on the wings of an empire and the blood of men, stretches over 5 millennia, and none of it is more exhilarating than the history of Israel. Israel has been a country that has been marred in war, suffering, massacre, and hardship, and that no other country has ever suffered. Israelis, as a people, have suffered through terror, torture, genocide, and the Holocaust. They have been the scapegoat for almost every tyrant since Rome, up into Hitler and its Arab neighbors. But Israel has fought back, and surprisingly has won, which has created new enemies for Israel. Instead of Arab armies and international pressure, Israel has delved itself into the world of terrorism and fanatics. Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or the PLO, have been hammering Israel's borders since the 1960s. Though acts of espionage, terrorism, assassination, and kidnapping, these groups have been in the international spotlight for many years. But what role does the U.S. play in this? According to the Jewish National Library, a man named Nathan Bourbon was the first to coin the term Zionism, or the belief that there is a Jewish homeland in Palestine. At the time, was ruled by the Ottoman Empire. Another man, Theodor Herzl, was one of the founders of the Zionist movement and established the First and Second Zionist Congress, which created the Zionist organization, an international group of Jews using political channels to establish a Jewish territory in Palestine. Fast forward to 1917, during World War I, a man named Arthur Barford and the British Foreign Secretary helped put forth a document called the Balfour Declaration, citing that Britain needed to help set up a Jewish territory within Palestine and not the United States. However, at the time, Britain was promised to help the local Arabs in Palestine who were rebelling against the Ottoman Empire. Who at that time was Britain's enemy. When the League of Nations put Palestine under British control after the war, both sides felt betrayed when Britain did nothing. Neither did the United States, however, so both sides took it into their own hands. The Jews started immigrating to Palestine, known as the Third and Fourth Aliyahs, which means ascent in Hebrew. Meanwhile, the Arabs used violence and politics to try to stem the Jewish immigrants, while at the same time bringing in more Arab settlers. Finally, in 1948, Britain evacuated Palestine after making an agreement to create a separate Jewish and Arab state. The Jews agreed while the Arabs did not. Immediately after Israel declared its independence, local Arabs rose up against the Jews, while at the same time Egypt and Saudi Arabia, Transjordan, now Jordan, Iraq, and Syria invaded, as the United States sat back and watched. Israel beat back the tide and went on the offensive, expanding its territory while leaving the West Bank and the Gaza Strip under enemy control. When a ceasefire was declared in 1949, Israel had won hundreds of thousands of Arabs, now called Palestinians, were refugees, and the Israeli War of Independence came to a close, all reported by BBC. After a huge defeat, as well as being defeated again in 3 more wars, many Palestinians thought that it was time to try by other means. This was the birth of the Palestinian terrorist. With their history comes the adversity caused by several groups. First of the groups to appear was the PLO. According to the Arabic site Al-Zahir, they formed in 1964 under peaceful circumstances, but soon turned deadly after the Six-Day War in 1967. They gained power under Zahir Arafat within the Palestinian refugee camps and formed guerrilla units within Jordan and Israel. Over the next decade, however, both Israel and Jordan cracked down on the organization. They soon had to set up quarters in Lebanon, only for it to be destroyed in 1982 by an Israeli invasion. Now, they are no longer paramilitary, but a peaceful political organization. Some of the more radical Palestinians, however, were in groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and Black September. Hezbollah, another Lebanese-based organization, is not actually Palestinian, but entirely Lebanese. Cited from Encyclopedia Britannica, they formed in 1982 after the invasion of Lebanon by Israel. Their goal was to fight an Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon and form a Shiite Muslim state after withdrawal. Conflict between Israel and Hezbollah launched a brief but bitter war in 2006. Hezbollah was the first organization to successfully defend against an invasion by Israel, but they still suffered heavily. Since then, they have been more of a political and military organization within Lebanon and not Israel. The last and most recently famous organizations is Hamas. Hamas was originally officially formed in 1988 by a Sunni Muslim clerk in the Gaza Strip. Their first suicide bombing was in 1993, 5 months before the signing of the Oslo Accords, which confirmed Palestinian rule on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Hamas condemned this agreement and fought to undermine it. In 2007, Hamas took over entire control of the Gaza Strip, which led was led by Fahad, a Palestinian political organization. This led to a conflict between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, which is still controlled by Fahad today. With all of this violence, we think about the political motives behind everything. What these groups were actually fighting for was an independent Palestinian country within Israel. They are essentially freedom fighters, in a sense. They have kidnapped, hijacked, and murdered their way to the world spotlight, and in the 1972 Olympics in Munich, Germany, Black September kidnapped and killed 11 Israeli coaches and athletes after Israel launched Operation Wrath of God to wipe out the organization. Information from the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses for Terrorism showed that after a couple of years of retaliatory strikes from Israel, Black September disbanded in 2008. In 2008, also, Hamas started launching rockets against Israel, who responded with a ground invasion and a 3-week occupation of the Gaza Strip. Reported by Foreign Council Affairs. And then again, in November of 2012, Hamas started launching rockets against Israel. Israel immediately responded with a week-long air campaign striking key targets within the Gaza Strip. Many feared a full-blown ground invasion, but a ceasefire was agreed to and a ground invasion never took place, reported to by BBC. However, it was discovered that Iran is resupplying Hamas due to drone activity by the United States, reported by government. With this difficult history, adversity, and political retaliation, this all has made Israel one of the strongest countries. To recap some of the important qualities, the first modern Israel was first thought of during the Zionist movement, and they got their way and a new country. Second, the Arabs disagreed and fought to eradicate Israel but lost 4 wars. Third, Palestinian terrorists and political organizations are still fighting for Israel today to form a Palestinian country. A recent milestone of the Palestinians was a recent United Nations vote deemed Palestine as an observer state. The BBC interviewed Palestinians after the vote, and they asked if this would help peace settlements within Israel. All of them said no. They didn't want peace. They wanted to fight to gain full independence. With this information, there will probably no near peace settlement. And the fighting will make Israel stronger and continue on their rough path to the future.